when my master Caiaphas had assembled this group to go arrest Jesus, he told us how important it was that everything had to go exactly as he planned. What happens if you don't recognize Jesus in the dark? He asked. He can't slip away in the darkness or confusion. Judas promised him, listen, he trusts me, he calls me a friend. There'll be plenty of moonlight for us to see everything, for me to recognize him to recognize me. I'll greet him with the traditional kiss of friendship. And then the rest will be up to you guys. As I got closer, I stood by Caiaphas and watched as the soldiers got ready and armed themselves. And listen, this Jesus, he's a blasphemer. He can't be allowed to corrupt Yahweh's word anymore. I was just excited that justice would finally be done. So my master turned to me and he saw that little bit of excitement and said, hey, you want to go with him, don't you? Then go. Help arrest him and bring me back a thorough eyewitness of the account. So I thanked him and promised that I'd do exactly like he asked me to do. So we began our short walk just across the Kidron Valley. Judas was up front leading the way with his torch. I did my best not to stumble on any of the rocks or bushes because, again, we want the element of surprise, right? Someone falling and yelling out in pain would immediately give us away. And I think there was a fear really amongst all of us that if all of a sudden they heard us coming, if they knew what was about to happen, that we would see that insurrection. We would see what all of us had feared since hearing the Hosanna cries of Palm Sunday just a couple days before. So we decided that Judas would go on ahead of the rest of us, while we would hide back in the bushes. And we were so close to the entrance of the garden. We all kind of held our breath, could hear Judas's footsteps as he continued on. When all of a sudden we saw Judas approach a figure in the distance, and when the torch light came on him, it looked like he was expecting Judas. And this man had this, confidence or dignity. He stood upright and didn't seem to have a care in the world. So Judas gave him an awkward embrace, kissed him, and we heard him say, "Greetings, Rabbi." So right then, we saw Jesus look directly into Judas's eyes. If he was surprised or if he was angry that somebody from his inner circle had turned against him, he gave no sign. It was actually pretty comforting to me because Jesus seemed completely unaware of our plot, didn't seem to even notice us at all. He just simply said, "Hey, friend, why have you come?" Well, Judas began to stumble with his words a little bit, and he couldn't answer the question. So the leader of our group decided, hey, the time had come to move forward. We didn't want Judas's awkward discomfort. Let Jesus know that something was awry. We, at this point, just continued and were very loud approaching Jesus. No longer were we concerned about the noise. And then all of a sudden, this muscular, very weather-beaten man just got right out in front of me. Before I can even move, he got out his sword and just started swinging it like crazy. I'm not a soldier. I'm not used to this. But in that instant, my head exploded with pain. And I put my hand up to my head, and I just felt blood. And I was able to tell that my ear was gone. That confirmed to me, seeing that my master was right, that these men were traitors. That they were violent men who would talk a lot about love, but yet when the rubber meets the road would just attack. So I felt dizzy. My vision was kind of dimming and I had to sit down. But during this, haze, I saw Jesus. And he laid his hand on this man's arm who attacked me. And he moved his arm down, had him lower the sword. And he asked all of his followers to disarm themselves. He spoke as someone who had complete authority, who was over all the situation, and everyone listened to him. I remember him saying, "Peter, hey, put your sword away and let me be taken willingly. Remember how history's worked. All who take the sword will die by the sword. Violence begets violence, but love begets love. I don't need to be rescued. What's a surprise to you is no surprise to me. It's the plan of my Father. The scriptures are being fulfilled. If I wanted to be saved from these men, I could simply pray to my Father. And he would provide me with more than 12 legions of angels. Peter, I am in no danger, and neither are you." It was at that moment, Jesus looked right at me, and he knelt down, and he reached his hand, and he took my hand off my head, and he put his hand on there. And I remember looking at his eyes, because his eyes were gentle, and all of the pain in my ear faded, and tears began to well up. He got up, and then he turned towards the rest of our group, and I put my hand back in my ear, and it was back. I was fully healed. It was in that exact moment there was a question. Why is it that we're so afraid of this man? Is this man really the criminal that we were led to believe? Several weeks later, as I've been wrestling with this question, on the day of Pentecost, I was in a large crowd, and wouldn't you know it, Peter, who attacked me, was preaching a sermon, and he invited me to a greater healing than my ear. He invited me to healing of my heart. See, it wasn't until that day that I really fully understood that Jesus' capture and betrayal, the cross and his burial were no accident.